Benjamin Moore & Co. is an American company that produces paint. It is owned by Berkshire Hathaway, was ranked #1 in customer satisfaction by J.D. Power and Associates in 2011 and 2012. It's won Best Green Companies for America's Children, Edison Best New Product Award for Sustainability, and was voted Robb Report Best of the Best. That is how you turn paint into profit. Sunitha Ray is Benjamin Moore's Director of Supply Chain Transformation, and this is how she's turning supply chain strategy theory into practice. Hello, Sunitha Ray.
Hello, Adam. Thanks for having me here.
No worries whatsoever. How are you? Enjoyed it so far?
Oh, it's been excellent. And, some of the takeaways has really been our discussions on technology and business alignment. I really enjoyed Dr. Thierry's views today on collaboration and strategic alignment. And I think my presentation is kind of a nice segue into, some of the concepts we've heard during the conference.
Lovely, and making it real. Before you begin, Sunitha, I just want to ask you one question. What is one thing you think about your role as a supply chain leader that COVID-19 has changed forever?
Yes. So as a supply chain leader, I think it's important to, align with the rest of the organization. Supply chain is not a silo. It's definitely no longer a functional silo. It's no longer a cost, a cost center. It's no longer, something that happens behind the scenes. With COVID especially, we've seen that supply chains really come to the fore. We've had an interesting challenge this year. We've actually seen a pretty high demand of paint, especially because of the lockdown. And it's been amazing to partner with finance, with IT, with the rest of the organization, with suppliers and with customers this year. So this has been a unique year in terms of where relationships has really driven trust, and it's really driven paint to the hands of the customer faster than we could ever have imagined.
Lovely. Well, I hope long may it continue in that sense, at least. Right, okay, you know the kind of rules of the game by now. Sunitha has something to talk to you about. She has some slides to talk to you about it using. When that is over, we'll be back for our final Q&A of the summit. Don't leave anything on the table. If there's anything you want to ask, please do put it to Sunitha. I'll be back to take it. So virtual thinking caps on, virtual hands raised, and we'll see you shortly. Ladies and gentlemen, Sunitha Ray.
Thank you, everyone. So before I start, just a quick introduction about me, and I will go into a little bit about Benjamin Moore in our presentation and how I'm approaching the slides today. A little bit about me. So this is my second year in Benjamin Moore. I work out of the corporate headquarters in New Jersey. I report to the Chief Supply Chain Officer. Supply chain in Benjamin Moore spans across product development, all of the planning, procurement, upstream processes, and the downstream execution like manufacturing, transportation, distribution, and customer service. So 65% of the company reports into the Chief Supply Chain Officer, and my role spans end-to-end spectrum with the primary goals and my marching orders being, hey, let's take supply chain into the future, make it a competitive advantage, not just internally and to make the best paint, which we do, but also to focus on delivering customer value and inculcate a higher level of thinking and really influence talent development and the new breed of supply chain talent within Benjamin Moore. That said, my presentation today will really focus on, what my thought process was coming into this role, understanding where our strengths and our risks lie, and what approaches and frameworks I picked, and then kind of go into the deliverables and the output that we produced this year at Benjamin Moore. That said, I want to keep it really short so that we have a little bit more time for Q&A, and please raise your hands. I know that a lot of interesting innovations and challenges are being implemented every day across these organizations. Love to hear more, love to hear your thoughts and what you're doing within your organization so I can learn more as well. That said, I don't know if you can see my slides.
Yeah.
All right, so what is supply chain strategy, right? So we start off with that. So strategy really comes from the Greek word strategia, and it really started off in military combat, where where everything has to be planned and executed. So supply chain is pretty similar to a strategic kind of a plan to not just win the battle and the war, but also to execute to the plan to gain a competitive advantage. This is one of the my most favorite definitions of supply chain strategy. It is to really influence the pattern of decisions related to every supply chain activity, including the delivery of products and services. Moving on to why strategy, right? I mean, why do we need it? So regardless of what the goals are for supply chain, whether it is to become a collaborative value network, or is it to become an omni-channel fulfillment powerhouse, or is it to deliver customer value, or is it to move to industry 4.0? For all of it, the journey really starts off with what your supply chain strategy is. So, and supply chain strategy always stems from the corporate overall enterprise strategy. And when we talk about enterprise strategy, we're really talking about, who our customers are, and what are the capabilities that we as a business want to offer to our customers. Now, we are a mid-sized company and we cannot be everything to everyone. So we have to pick carefully as to who we want to service, who are the customer pool that we want to make really happy, and what is the business model that we operate on. And then we frame the value proposition to, hey, this is what I want to offer to. I want to be the best fulfillment, the best paint, and I want to make sure the paint is available when the customer wants, where the customer wants, and where she wants to pick it up from. That said, the primary drivers of enterprise strategy starts off with segmentation, cost to serve, and the overall customer strategy. So when we talk about segmentation, a lot of times I get asked, hey, are you looking at customer segmentation or supply chain segmentation? It's kind of one and the same. The customer segmentation is really, hey, what are the clusters of customers? So not every customer is the same. Our paint is definitely a premium paint, but within that paint, depending on, who you are, what your demographics are, and what your buying patterns are, you fit into a customer cluster, which we want to serve with specific product groups. Now, supply chain segmentation is slightly different from customer segmentation in the sense that we want to service those customer segments, but we don't want to peanut butter our services across all those segments. Like, we don't want a one size fits all, but we want to have a customized servicing approach to every customer segment, because end of the day, customer value is what's going to drive customer loyalty. Now, an important aspect of this, and this is again a project we just kicked off last year, was the cost to serve. Now, the cost to serve is a really important input into the enterprise strategy and also to the supply chain segmentation strategy. So cost to serve is really a fact-based method of analyzing, calculating historical activity-based costing from the end-to-end product flow. So from the time we buy we plan, buy, move, and we sell, from the raw material to the finished products, across planning processes and across distribution, fulfillment, and execution processes, and across sales processes as well, and really ends with financial processes like your invoice generation and invoice collections, days receivables, so on and so forth. So if you really look at it, the number one metric, and we'll talk about metrics in a little bit, the number one metric that as an organization we've adopted this year is the perfect order. And the perfect order spans between, from your raw material to your finished goods to the sales and the brand experience, ending with, invoices, and then after sales service as well. And again, we talked a little bit today about the circular economy. Reverse logistics is also a really important part of the whole equation. So that said, so what is a supply chain strategy? It's really it's really the gap or it's kind of like the important link between the overall enterprise strategy and the operational policies that exist on the ground. And why do we need supply chain strategy? So that you can actually start building your operating models, which would be unique to every set of customers that you want to serve. And when we're talking about capabilities, so, it could be more than just fulfillment models. It could be, hey, for this particular segment of customers, can we add a drop ship option? Can we add e-commerce? Do these customers need, special treatment? Do these customers need, manufacture to order or manufacture to engineer? And what resources do we want to, spread out among these customer segments? Which customer segments are, we really want to invest on to grow and to increase profitability? And then we come into, performance, right? How do you measure the performance? And for that, we've initiated, the hierarchy of metrics along with our partner Gartner. And this is really interesting where we started off. And if you look at the whole, the hierarchy, the top tier one or the top end of the spectrum is really, your demand forecasting, your demand accuracy or your forecasting accuracy. And the bottom is where you have all your functional metrics. So where we have started this journey is in the bottom layer, because traditionally, Benjamin Moore, we've been in operation for nearly 140 years. We have, very agile, a very responsive supply chain, but it has been very unique in the sense that it's been in different functional silos. So my first role when I joined was really to understand each of those silos, where the strengths of the silos are, and how do you integrate that layer and stitch them together so it's a seamless flow of information from the end-to-end spectrum. And then we go on to the strategic initiatives, and it's really the whole the whole structure or the flow of the end-to-end strategy is the strategic initiatives, right? And sometimes we wonder, hey, we have a lot of initiatives, but hey, why are we not able to see them through the end? Why do they not provide the value that we are looking for? And again, the biggest filler is the gap in the whole process is a supply chain strategy. So if you have a strategy that's aligned with your business objectives, and operationally, it triggers a certain number of strategic initiatives, and the supply chain strategy makes sure that alignment continues from the end-to-end spectrum, and you're able to get the most value out of the initiatives that you have. So moving forward, another approach that the roadmap that there's a little bit of a lag. So I'm just gonna. Sorry about that. All right. So the journey that we really adopted was, starting from the enterprise strategy, let's look and set up a supply chain strategy. So there has been research reports that have stated that more than 70% of organizations do not have a clearly defined supply chain strategy. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So the roadmap that we took for defining and implementing our strategy was really starting with the vision and mission. The vision is really, what do we want to be when we grow up? What do we want to do? What do we want supply chain to be? And the mission is how are we going to achieve that vision? And to that end, we really started with assessing our current state. It's know yourself, know where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, what opportunities are out there today, and then look at where do we want to be in the future. What is the future state of supply chain? So with customers demanding more, becoming more heterogeneous, and customer loyalty, stickiness has certainly dwindled, but customers are also demanding more. They're used to better service. They're used to, services rather than buying a product, kind of like the Uberization of America. Right. So how do we actually get to fulfilling a value rather than just shipping products to the customer? And then we went on to really defining what our approach is, what our strategy should be, and then build the operating models for each of those customer segmentation that we talked about, and then look at initiatives which aligns with not just supply chain, but other functions as well. And then we go on to, the business cases, which projects are going to be prioritized, and then measure, manage, and sustain the initiatives. So another approach that was very relevant to us was the Fisher's model of product characteristics and supply chain strategy. Interestingly, we have several sets of products. So a lot of you who have purchased Benjamin Moore, you've probably heard of Regal Select. It's our number one top seller. It's a very, it's a very stable product. It's been around for decades and very high quality. And, so we call that a functional product where we know the demand, we know the history. If I could draw the demand curve right now, it would be almost identical every year. And we already have the supply nailed down. We have stable sources of supply. So that would be a functional product. Whereas if any of you have heard of Scuffex, it's a latest innovative product, which we launched about 3 years ago. And it's completely scruff proof. And it's been a really high seller. But when we started off, we had absolutely no sales history. We did not know what the forecast is going to look like. We did not know what the stock out levels were. We didn't know what safety stocks to have, what the lead times were for the supply, because we were using a few unique raw material that did not exist before in Benjamin Moore. So using Fisher's model of, hey, where should I apply efficient supply chain policies, and where should I apply responsive supply chain strategies? We came on to, sorry, I wasn't advancing the slides. All right, there you go. So we looked at, so functional versus innovative products and which supply chain to use for which functional, which products. And, and again, while we are talking about different products, we also have a pretty big initiative ongoing right now, which is on product portfolio optimization. So we want to make sure that, we are able to categorize and segment the products with our customer segments so that we can invest better and we can align our products to our, customer demand, which in turn will, align with our supply strategy. So that said, the next real challenge was, hey, how do we, select the right supply chain type, and what do we, optimize on? Now, if you look at the supply chain trade-off triangle, the three corners are really customer service levels, asset utilization, and cost optimization. Now, clearly for us, so a little bit about Benjamin Moore here is that, which some of you may not know, is that Benjamin Moore is 100%, made in America. We have about 8,000 outlets today which sells paint. Those are B2B. And most of the paint retailers that we work with, or actually almost 100% that we work with, are either small independent mom and pop paint stores or they are cooperatives. So we, as a company policy, we don't work with big box retailers. So a lot of times, our retailers look at us, as their distribution center. So a lot of them don't have their own warehouses. So we have to really optimize on service levels. Today, our service levels are, about 97% fill rate within 24 hours. For some of our customers, we, in fact, meet their requirements within 12 hours. So service is really important for us. And while we can never optimize all three parts of the triangle, we choose to optimize service levels. And the second, the second angle of the triangle that we choose to optimize is our asset utilization, only because we have a very high cost of capital, and we also have a very high cost of assets. So a lot of plants and, again, going with our, barrier to entry. So we do have a very high barrier to entry, which is our high cost. And then we, our strategy, which we choose to use, is more responsive and the risk hedging, which kind of matches with the innovative and functional product approach. That said, what is our end state going to look like, right? So what is a segmented supply chain strategy? So how do we focus from being a supply-focused supply chain to a customer value-focused supply chain or a demand-driven value network? So we're really talking about different supply chain strategy. It could be you, and for other companies which have different business units, it's typical to find different kinds of supply chain, where one supply chain optimizes on cost, you have another one which optimizes on service levels, and then you have a different kind of a supply chain which optimizes on value-added services and customization. For instance, paint is a highly customized supply chain because we use what's called the postponement strategy. Our customer value really is in the final point of service, because the color you want is tinted at the last minute. So that is one of the most important areas for us to optimize as well. So moving quickly on, I have about 3 minutes to wind up. Moving quickly on to how we really started on our supply chain journey. I'll take a minute there to move the slides. So a little bit about us. Benjamin Moore was founded in 1883. It is a heritage brand. We have 5 manufacturing plants. We have 18 distribution centers. And we currently have about 8,000 plus retail outlets, which are all independent retail stores. When we started approaching this journey, it was really about understanding our current state and understanding our customers, our internal inside out, and then your outside in. What are the external trends? And who are our competitors? What are they doing that we are not doing? And what are we doing that they don't offer, but our customers need? And then we did a whole risk assessment and the competitive advantages workshops. And the direction and the path we follow was really, starting off with, okay, what is our strategy? What's going to be our processes? How are we going to structure the organization towards the new approach? And what's going to be our metrics? So the end state really is, going to be a customer value creation from a mix of, product demand, product focus, supply focus, as well as customer value focus. So these are some of the outputs that we have. I just threw it in there. So we kind of went through this whole exercise, and this was a really cross-functional approach. Our sessions included, FP&A, cost accounting, IT, HR, corporate strategy, so on and so forth. We actually did a very interesting risk prioritization matrix, a risk priority scorecard, and this was all pre-COVID. So, COVID is nowhere in the picture, and we know how it completely has changed our new normal today. We also started with a metrics project, and we finally came up with this heat map after all of these sessions we did to really figure out which are the strategic initiatives that we should focus on and make it like priority number one. And that's kind of what we've done this whole year. And despite COVID, this week has actually been our 2021 strategic planning week. We've had multiple project leads, team leads come and talk to us about what they've done across these strategic initiatives. And it has been very gratifying to see that, we've not just achieved a lot of our, vision and mission, but we've also gone quite far in our strategic priorities. And we look forward to, 2021 to drive our supply chain forward. I'll stop here, but love to hear more thoughts, have more interaction. Any questions? Back to you, Adam. That is an excellent question, and thanks for asking that. Yes, so it was actually kind of interesting. So when we had our, meeting before we started the workshops, we met with the CEO's organization, and we had to do one pre-session with our C-suite to really figure out, hey, do we really want to optimize cost, or do we really want to, optimize growth? Because profitability and growth it's a trade-off. You can't have both, right? So you can either have revenue growth or you can either have profitability. So let's nail this down, guys. What is it that's more important to you? Because our strategy has to align with that. So after a lot of the deliberations, the consensus was, yes, we want to grow. Revenue growth is something that's key to us. So in the short run, even if we do, step back on profitability, reaching and expanding to more markets and more customers is going to give us, a higher advantage in the long run. So that was what, was the takeoff from those sessions.
Thank you very much indeed. Randy, thank you for your question, sir. Have a great rest of the day. Much appreciated. Up next, we have Joshua Buchanan, I believe, from Walmart. Joshua, are you there, sir?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Wow, what an incredible view you have out of your kitchen window.
I wish I had that view out of my kitchen window.
Yeah, I bet we all do. What is your question for Sunitha, Josh?
So Sunitha, I really appreciate the presentation you did. Good view on strategy creation, and a couple of questions I had about your process there at Benjamin Moore is what you talked about as the enterprise strategy, right? So how much of a long-term view are your leaders giving you in terms of an enterprise strategy, right? So how much it takes a long time for a supply chain strategy to come together. So how much of a future forecast are they giving you?
That's a great question, Josh. So when we started off, the business strategy was really just about 2 to 3 years long. And I also own supply chain network design as part of my team. So when we started off with the network design, now a network design cannot exist for 2 to 3 years. It has to be a minimum of 10 years, right? So to actually come out with, hey, where are we going in the next 10 years? What's our plant, map going to look like? Where is our distribution center locations going to look like in the next 10 years? We kind of force-fed, business strategy to expand to 10 years. And while it's difficult it's actually difficult to kind of think 10 years long in terms of a business strategy, because every year or every 2 years, it will go through a refresh. But at least, from a high level perspective, it's better to have that roadmap and have that thinking, say that, hey, we want to focus on revenue growth for the next 5 years. And then after 5 years, we want to focus on profitability. Now, that's a great starting scenario to have. And it will go through a few changes, but it's necessary for us to start planning ahead, because today we have a 10, 15-year roadmap for supply chain network design. Which plant, where are we going to open new plants? Where are we going to open, new distribution centers? What's going to be our e-fulfillment, distribution locations going to look like? Things like that. So we kind of forced, thinking in that area so that we could be prepared to meet business objectives.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you for the question, Joshua. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you, sir. Up next, we have Jason Huffsmith from DeLonghi. Good morning, good afternoon. Jason, where are you? Is it good morning or afternoon?
It is just afternoon. I'm on the East Coast in New Jersey.
Good afternoon, Jason. What's your question for Sunitha?
Sunitha, I thought that was a very interesting presentation, and it actually, I would say, with DeLonghi, we're kind of at the starting point of that strategy and transformation roadmap. So I'd like to ask you, what was your biggest roadblock you faced in this implementation of this transformation strategy?
That's a brilliant question. And my first answer would be the culture. I don't know who said this, but somebody famous said this. They said culture can eat strategy for lunch. Mm-hmm. So typically, Benjamin Moore has a very high, very agile supply chain, right? I mean, we manufacture. So some of our key customers, we actually don't even have a frozen period. So they send us their specific make to order requirements today. They expect the paint to be shipped to them tomorrow afternoon. So with such an agile supply chain, how do we change the mindset of, sales to talk a different talk, to educate our customers, and then internally within supply chain, it's about, hey, how do we align our performance goals to the entire supply chain rather than just my function, right? I'll give you an example. So for manufacturing, instead of measuring cost per gallon of paint, which has been traditionally how we have, measured performance across the execution functions, we kind of modified that a little bit to, hey, instead of a cost per gallon, let's look at production plan adherence, right? So we want to make sure that whatever is the manufacturing production schedule, the adherence to that, whether it's 100% compliant, 99% compliant, is more meaningful rather than just go by a cost per gallon, which is a very tactical metric, and it doesn't really align with our objective. Now, our planned gallons, which comes out of our demand forecasting, is much more robust. It takes into consideration the SNOP, the collaborative forecasting, and most of the retailers, whom we work with have been with us for 40, 50 years. So, there is a trust relationship and they know what they want. So let's not, over manufacture. Let's not hold too much inventory, because while we do need a high level of safety stock, because we do prioritize customer service levels, what is the optimum blend, right? And that doesn't come with measuring cost, especially if you're optimizing on service levels. So that mindset change was, I think, the biggest roadblock. To kind of counter that, one of the things we did was, like, every workshop we did, we had different functions actually leading those sessions. And, they were, it's like, when you want accountability cannot be delegated. So it has to be, ingested. It's got to be, it got to come out of the function. So every function, there was a lot of, prep work. So a lot of, pre-alignment meetings. So it was about, hey, what do we want from this workshop? Here are the risks. And the risks doesn't have to be, manufacturing focused or transportation focused or procurement focused. It's got to be end to end, right? And how do we manage that risk? The same risk exists everywhere. It could be a supplier risk, but eventually it's going to impact our, stock levels. So how do we manage the risk across the end-to-end spectrum? So a lot of work has gone into this, a lot of thought processes gone, and I was pleasantly, and I've done this kind of strategy workshop for most of my clients when I've been in the consulting space, but I've been pleasantly surprised by how everyone just jumped into it, with a lot of enthusiasm.
Thank you very much indeed. Sunitha, I can't add very much to this conversation, but I can tell you the Culture Eats strategy quote is Peter Drucker. That's about the only thing that I can add to it. Jason, thank you so much, sir, and thank you for all the roundtable work this week. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you, Jason. Much appreciated. Up next, we have Alejandro Encinas from Stanley Black & Decker. Alejandro, hello, sir. How are you?
Great, thank you. How are you? Good?
Yeah, really well, thank you. What's your question for Sunitha, Alejandro?
Hey, Sunitha, really great presentation. Really appreciate. Very useful. You mentioned the creating competitive advantage, right? Supply chain becoming a competitive advantage. And then you also mentioned about on the strategy, right? You need to know what's going on with the competitors, right? Where are we better? Where are we behind? So how much information in your case, right, Benjamin Moore, do you have about the competition? And what are really the good sources that you have to get information, what the competitors are doing better than you?
That's a great question. So we do have a research and strategy cell within Benjamin Moore, which is directly under the CEO's organization. And they compile research reports on most of our competitors, not just nationally, but also globally. So today, Benjamin Moore, 100% of our paint is manufactured in the United States, but we ship to about 70 countries abroad. So we have research reports that's gathered on a monthly basis, not just from North America, but also around the world. So some of the top paint companies what technologies are they using? How are they innovating? Which customers are they serving? What are customers looking for while buying paint? And then there are certain, industry analysts who are specific to the paint industry. We have partnered with them, so they do come in. They come out here. They have workshops with us. We strategize about how to innovate the next generation of paint. Like for instance, Gen X, which is our award-winning colorant, was something which came out of these innovation workshops that one of the industry analysts actually facilitated for us. So innovations like pretty R&D and product development in Benjamin Moore is one of the I would say one of the biggest areas of focus. We have a huge 50-acre R&D development center in New Jersey, where we are constantly churning out what we think would be the next innovation in architectural coatings.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you, Alejandro. Sunitha, before we bring up our last questioner, I'm going to ask you to guess who you think it might be. It's our last question of the summit.
Sami
Muraswamy. Sami, hello, sir. Last question of the summit.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that puzzle, and also Sunitha answering that puzzle to Adam. Adam, you're really a great MOC. Thank you very much again, for the whole 3 days, for your inspiration, for your energy and enthusiasm. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And also, I would like to thank GDS on behalf of the entire participants for the great job. I would say that one is more than this is more than a virtual summit. It is creating supply chain experience.
Well, it's very kind of you
all
to
these
say.
professionals together. And then, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a big round of applause for Adams as well as GDS. Thumbs up.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Sami. Much appreciated. It is not just
my
me. There are
question
voices
to
in my
Sunitha
ear and
is,
everything.
Sunitha, thank you very much again. You also contributed more in our roundtable conference. And then the great presentation. My question to you is, I have two questions. Number one, in terms of, you're talking about the business model, there are a lot of things you're talking about, the strategy and all. Yes, I agree with you. Sometimes, culture eats a strategy for, you said the lunch, I would say culture eats a strategy for dinner sometimes. Particularly a company like yours, 140 years old, the American companies, one of the best American companies, Benjamin Moore, you may be carrying a lot of baggage with you, obviously, because of a 140 years old company. So it is a brand-based experience, customer experience, or customer-centric based experience? That's the first question. Brand-based or brand experience? Benjamin Moore has a brand. I think like a IKEA, Starbucks, and also the other one is the Ryanair. Those are the three things I can, just to give an example for the brand experience. They create a brand experience for the humanity. So yours is a brand experience creation or customer experience or customer-centric creation business model. That's number one.
Question, Sami. Yep. Go ahead.
So number two is, you are in the metric organization, like you said, like the silos. The main thing is from one silo to another silo. The interface between the silo is the key thing, how you are going to be overcoming that. That is the bottleneck. That is one of the obstacles we need to overcome. It is a matrix-based organization or value stream organization where the supply chain fit in. What is your suggestion, recommendation, in analyzing all the strategies that you're talking about? In a matrix organization where the supply chain fit in. And then the first one is that I asked you, the Benjamin Moore is a brand experience-based business model or customer-centric or customer experience-based business model?
Okay, thank you, Sami. Great question. So I'll answer your first one. Everything in Benjamin Moore is customer-centric. So, our brands, we do have premium heritage brands, as we call it, but a brand is only so much when it's called a brand. So ultimately, the value that the brand has to offer has to be perceived by the customers. So we exist today because our customers want us. So we are really trying to position our brands to what our customers, perceive as value. So end of the day, brands are great, but if it doesn't translate to customer value, then we don't want it. The second question that you asked was a matrix organization, and that leads me to a very interesting other initiative that we have going on, which is really organizational structure. What is the right organizational structure for the future? And that is a debate that we've been having recently. And while matrix is great, one of the interesting parts about Benjamin Moore is the tenure of our people. So typically, people at Benjamin Moore, we're very people focused, and people are our biggest assets. While people have been here for decades, what we are now thinking of is, hey, how do we rotate them around? So not just within supply chain, but even externally, so that they understand how pricing works, how finance works, how sales work. And within, upstream and downstream, we want to, rotate folks so that we get the benefits of, documenting all the tribal knowledge, and B, when you rotate resources, you get the advantage of different diversity in thinking and different points of view. So that is being actively, propagated within the organization, and even within our function. So we have, I report to the Chief Supply Chain Officer, but my role spans across the end-to-end spectrum. And in the future, we are looking at more such leaders who can span multiple functions than just be focused within an area or within one particular function. And that's been really driven by our Chief Supply Chain Officer. And having the sponsorship at that level, including sponsorship from the CEO's level, goes a really, really long way to make that a reality.
Thank you very much indeed, Sunita. Sami, thank you so much for all your contributions to the summit. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed. Sunita, before you go, one final word. What is the single thing you take away from this summit that you would like our audience to also consider?
The one single thing is, it's really the data value of supply chain that I took away from this. I mean, there's been so many great discussions, especially in our roundtables, about supply chain is, becoming more and more of a competitive advantage. And the single element that spurs it forward is end-to-end data and high quality data that's visible across the end-to-end spectrum.
Lovely. Sunita Ray, thank you very much indeed. Have a great rest of the day. Have a great rest of the summit.
You
of course,
too.
you've got an afternoon. Pleasure to meet you. Thank you, Sunita. Really appreciate it.